go ahead and start the recording. Thank you, Sabina, and I'll hand it over to Sarah, who will be doing the welcome.
Yeah, welcome everyone to the first Bragg meeting of fiscal year 2024. Glad we got the meeting passcode thing all sorted. So for those of you who are new to Bragg, our mission is to provide a forum for collegial interaction in the research administration community. We do this by facilitating presentations on subject matter experts, creating an environment to foster peer-to-peer exchanges, and seeking and sharing best practices, which is fabulous because we're doing best practices today. Before I turn it over to Sonia, I would like to do a couple of updates and announcements for you. So first, I'm happy to welcome Varun Bhatnagar. Hope I didn't butcher that too badly. Contracts and Grants Supervisor with Contracts and Grants Accounting. He has joined our steering committee, so welcome to Varun. Secondly, Kate Lewis is stepping down as Bragg co-chair this year, but will remain an active member for the steering committee. So many thanks to you, Kate, for your leadership and continued commitment to Bragg. And finally, I will be serving as co-chair with Hannah Holloway, so certainly have some big shoes to fill since I'm taking over Kate's spot. That's it for announcements, so I will turn it over to Sonia for introductions.
Hello, everyone. Today we will have a panel of pre-award experts who will share their best practices during the proposal development and submission process and are available to answer your pre-award questions. Joining us today is Sabina, Joyce Heidi Gomez, Joy Asanyu, Assistant Directors from the Sponsored Projects Office, Kate Lewis, Assistant Director from the Industrial Alliance Office, Erica Whitney, Associate Director for Strategic and Training from the Berkeley Research Development Office, John Zurich, RA Supervisor from the BEST region, Melody Lee, Research Administrator from URSO region, Ryan Fahn, Research Administrator from the PROS region, and Chris Stingle, Research Administrator from the SHARE region. I'll turn it over to Hannah, who will be our panel moderator for today.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. If you have a question to ask our panelists during today's discussion, please use the raise hand reaction and we'll call on you, or you can use the Q&A function in Zoom. To start things off, let's hear from each of you. Feel free to quickly introduce yourself and then briefly describe, maybe just a sentence or two, your role in the proposal development and submission process. Sabina, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sabina Gafarova. I'm one of the assistant directors at SPO. My role is, like for all SPO CGOs, is that we review and submit proposals that are submitted to us through Phoebe record that you guys probably know about. And we do review for institutional risks. So in a nutshell, that's what our contribution is to the pre-award process. Should I tag someone else, popcorn it to someone?
Yeah, that would be great.
I see Kate next to me.
Hi, everyone. I am Sabina's counterpart in Industry Alliance's office. On the pre-award side, we also review and submit proposals. We focus on industry proposals, SBIR, STTRs, and those are federal government to small business, where small business is then subcontracting UC Berkeley, and also membership proposals. And just to tag you back, Sabina, SPO handles nonprofits, government, federal government, state government, local government, including foreign governments and foreign nonprofits.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I will pass it on to Joyce.
Thanks, Kate. Hello, everyone. My name is Joyce So. I am an other assistant director from the Sponsored Projects Office. I think Kate and Sabina kind of explained very well what we do already, so I won't repeat that. I support I have a team of 3 contract grant officers, and my pod supports mostly URSO, SHARE, and regions, and a few units from the BEST regions. And I'll popcorn it to Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy ICU. I use she, her pronouns. Like Sabina and Joyce, I am an assistant director. So I review and submit proposals. Yeah, and I mainly work with the pros and the best region and share as well. So I'll pass it over to Whitney.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm the Associate Director of the Berkeley Research Development Office. And our purpose is to improve the quality of large, complex, or strategic proposals that the campus is submitting, primarily reducing the faculty burden and applying for them, putting these large teams together. So our job is a bit different from the job that many of you here are doing, where we are primarily concerned with the technical component of the proposal, the science, the project management, the training, the diversity, workforce development, all of those aspects, and helping write that aspects, but we work hand in hand with the RAs very closely. So Heidi, you're in the upper corner for me. Let's get you.
Hi, Heidi Gomez, and I am an assistant director in SPO. I supervise Pod 1, which includes Jeffrey. I just realized I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I've never said it. Bui, maybe. Dave Beza, E.B. Thorpe, and Angela Martinez. And we work mostly with the best regions and with like a sprinkling of a couple others. I was actually looking at my spreadsheet trying to figure out what I do. I will pass it over to John.
Thanks, Heidi. I'm John Zurich. I am one of the pre-award supervisors in the BEST region, and our role is primarily to work directly with the faculty, postdocs, and the grad students in determining which office their proposals should be routed to, work with them to fill in all the administrative information, work with them on developing the budgets for their proposals, and scope the RFPs, make sure that the components and guidelines are all accounted for, and essentially assist them with any troubleshooting and getting the proposals routed through the appropriate offices and then eventually to sponsor. So I will hang it over to Melody.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Melody, and I'm a research administrator in the Ursa region. For me, my role is also to work directly with PIs and grad students and postdocs to submit proposals to SPO and IAO through Phoebe, and also to put together the proposals in the sponsor portals for submission to the sponsor. And I'll pass it off to Ryan.
All right, thanks, Molly. Hello, my name is Ryan. I am pre-award RA in the pros region. Yeah, so through Melody, I work with the PIs directly and to help shepherd the proposal to submission in Phoebe to SPO. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Next is Chris. Chris,
you're still muted.
Sorry, my mouse is acting weird. So I'm Chris Stengel. My pronouns are she, they. I am a pre-award research administrator in SHARE, and I work exclusively with the College of Chemistry. So I think John and Melody and Ryan explained what I do. I have an added difference in that a lot of the faculty members have their own assistants. And so sometimes I work directly with faculty and grad students and postdocs, and sometimes I sort of look at the proposal that's already been put together by the faculty administrative assistants and sort of review it. And then there's sort of an education component of trying to train the faculty assistants in proposal preparation.
All right, thank you, everyone. It's great to have research BRS RAs and central offices kind of together to discuss pre-award as a whole. So one of the first questions we got is kind of a general question. So anyone is more than welcome to take the first stab at it. But what are the key elements you look for when first reviewing a solicitation? Maybe we can hear from some RAs first and then from some Central Campus.
I could start, mainly, yeah, some things that we mainly look for is indirect costs, it's pretty important. As well as specific requirements like they want, if they want like a project narrative, detailed budget, as well as any other forms such as like authorized signature forms that SPO will have to sign. Yeah. Anyone else?
I can jump in next. So to be honest, when I first get a proposal, the first thing I look at is the due date, because that's going to really determine like how urgent is it? What do I have to tell the PI right now? What do they need to give me right now? But due date aside, assuming I'm not very pressed for time, I'll look at the things like PI eligibility, things like total budget, or if there's a direct cost total, and then I'll really just go through the solicitation, like through the whole thing. Skipping part of the parts, especially for the program that's not really relevant administratively, but looking through the whole solicitation, make sure that I don't miss anything that might not come up from a keyword search if I just look up budget or a due date or something like that. And also that way you catch any instructions when you're entering things into the portal, like some things can be, like some items can vary from the general guidelines for a sponsor. So even if you're really comfortable with a particular sponsor's proposals and the general guidelines, it's still a great idea to look through the solicitation for specific instructions.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I would definitely say deadline is probably like the #1 thing that RAs look for, so we can get that timeline. Central office staff, is there anything in addition to that you guys look at when you receive a proposal through Phoebe and you're reviewing the solicitation?
I can step in first. One that we look at, so industry very rarely or not as commonly has RFPs, but we do get them. And so looking at an RFP, I'd look to see if it's a limited submission. There are several that we handle that are limited submissions. So we'd want to make sure that that process is followed. We'd want to look at the guidelines to see if there's any limitations on budget. An example is for certain types of awards that we handle or proposals, they're not allowed to charge PI salary, for example. So we have one that's a fellowship, but they can only charge lab expenses to their budgets. We would also look at IDC. We normally do not, and I'd say 99% of the time, do not grant IDC waivers to industry. However, for certain types of solicitations, we may be able to. And one example of that is the Johnson & Johnson Women in STEM Fellowship Program. And so that's one that we would be able to grant an overhead waiver. We'd also look for intellectual property terms if there's any in the solicitation, and any other terms and conditions that we would have to agree to upfront before we submit. And then finally, and this comes up more with the SBIR STTR proposals, but we'd look to see if there's any restrictions on citizenship. And that's related to the terms and conditions as well. But oftentimes for some of these Department of Defense solicitations, especially for small businesses, they do have restrictions on citizenship. They might have restrictions on publications. And so we'd want to make sure that we look at that and address those in any cover letter that we have, and also to make sure that the small business is aware that we can't accept those, and that they have a duty to notify the federal agencies so that we can get a fundamental research determination. I'm going to unspotlight myself so I can also spotlight Erica so that she can respond after Sabina.
Thank you, Kate. Does SPO have anything to add to that, a list of what you guys look for when reviewing a solicitation?
I can add something. In addition to what everybody else has mentioned, I double check the sponsor. I make sure is there a prime sponsor? Is this an NIH sponsor? And double check to make sure that we have any COI requirements. I think that that's a big one for me. Additionally, I receive a lot of foreign governmental sponsors. So the IDC for that is like, we need a vital interest. So that's part of the reason why I double check the sponsors. Anything else, Joyce? So just want to add to the indirect cost comment. If it is a federal sponsor, if there's an IDC exception, like policy, we also check and see if it's a statutory requirements, because we can only apply for indirect cost exceptions based on indirect cost policy that's from a statutory mandate. And then the other thing I kind of want to add, I think someone mentioned about due dates. Time zone is another thing that I actually pay attention to, because I mean, especially if it's an international sponsor and if it can be literally a day ahead. I guess the last thing I want to add would be, I would check and see if there are any like required reps inserts, because those can take time for us to complete.
Thank you so much.
I can just
yeah.
add one more
Yeah.
thing to that is I look to see if there's any cost share that's required in the solicitation. I feel like this is one big one for me because I want to make sure that campus PI or the department did not really volunteer cost share. As it happens, sometimes PIs don't necessarily know the difference. They just sometimes want to voluntarily cost share, which we really discourage because the administrative burden that it takes on the department and CGA to then report it. And as you know, for NSF solicitations, it's actually specifically prohibited to cost share unless it's required.
Yeah,
So-
thank you for mentioning that, because cost share is always a hot button issue. So yeah. Erica, did you have anything to add?
We'll say in addition to all of those things that people have mentioned, I'm also looking at the programmatic requirements, because not only does that tell us what we are going to need to write about and plan, but also what we need to budget for. And we can iterate the scope of the project based upon, the funds that are available to you and how much each of those components are going to cost. So there's a lot of back and forth trying to figure out what you can actually do with what the funds are available. So really knowing what the components that they're requiring of you is really important for us as well.
Great, thank you. We did have a question come in chat. This is directed towards SPO and IAO staff. What are the most common errors or omissions you see?
I can start. Sometimes I don't like PI status. I think that that's super important. If a researcher is submitting and they're not professor series, occasionally we need to double check to make sure that they have PI status. So sometimes those are not marked. Occasionally, like human subjects, missing 700 U's, indirect cost. The calculation might be off depending if it's total cost or total direct cost or modified direct cost, but I'll just start with those.
And I wanted to add to Joyce, the exceptional PI status and the human subjects or any COI issues, this will be under special review tab in Phoebe. And sometimes we feel like people know that it is an issue, but they don't necessarily know where to put that. And we do look for it in the special review tab in the Phoebe record.
On the IAO side, I'd say one of the big things is missing COI forms. So as a reminder for all industry, we always need a 700U. And because a lot of industry has already been earmarked for funding by the time we receive a proposal, we also ask for the addendum at the same time. So those are things that are missing sometimes. I guess the other thing would be the checkbox on the first tab. If it's an SBIR STTR proposal, please remember to check that, because that determines how the proposal is going to get routed. And so if it's not checked, it will go to SPO. If it is checked, it will come to us. And so that helps us to be able to meet our deadlines, make sure the right office is reviewing it, and so on.
I want to add a quick comment about the 700U. Oftentimes, I think I see that missing for a lot of the national labs that are managed by for-profit entity, because I mean, it may not register that a national lab is actually not government in terms of the COI regulations.
All right, thanks, Joyce. And thank you for mentioning the national labs, because that is a perfect segue into one of our questions, which is would-be Director towards SPO. What is the best way to facilitate a research IUT versus a non-research IUT setup with LBNL?
I can take that question.
Okay.
And then, and then others please chime in if I'm missing anything. But what I find is, I think it is important to know that LBNL procurement has two groups that handle different IUTs. One is for research and development, and the other is for shared labor and materials and supplies. Now, depending on how you get to know about the LBNL IUT coming in, you will be either approached by LBNL staff for one of those procurement offices asking you for a budget. I think one big first step is to find out if it is for research and development or if it is for shared labor or materials and supplies, because that will determine if you need a FEBA proposal record, because you do need it for research and development IUT. And if it's not, if it's for shared labor or for materials and supplies, you do not need to create a FEBA proposal record. So that's like a key. And that's one of the delayers. Because a lot of times the work is ongoing, you already submitted a budget to LBNL procurement officer, and you're not aware that SPO cannot do anything until we receive the FEBA record, if it is for research and development. This is one of the key factors. And another way is sometimes, let's say you were not looked in and you got across the actual IUT agreement already sent to you from LBNL. One way to tell if it will require FEBA proposal record or not is the first para in the introduction on the first page will tell you what purposes it is for. It will literally say there it is for a research, or it will say it is for shared labor, or if it is for supporting effort or other goods and services. And so based on that, you can also tell, oh, if it's for research, I need FEBA record routed. And the difference at SPO is that if it's for research, it will be processed by one of the SPO CGOs. And if it is for materials and supplies, and you don't need a FEBA proposal record, it's handled by our front desk. It's Glenn right now. And so he does not need a FEBA proposal record. He will just email the PI with some of the informed consent as required, and then he will process it. And another last thing I'll say is that if the IUT is for goods and services, that's not research and development, is for less than $10,000, there's no IUT required. Usually departments can bill for those services or under that amount. So we're talking for anything that's above $10,000 that will go as an IUT through SPO, the front desk.
Thank you, Sabina. Is there anything that the RAs want to add when it comes to R&D, research and development IUTs versus non-research IUTs? Okay, great. Miriam does have a question. I see your hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
If I have an IUT that is non-research, how am I supposed to get it to Glenn? What is the accepted standard operating
you
procedure?
can email to SPO Awards.
Okay.
And because Glenn in general also looks through the SPO Awards. He manages SPO Awards email address, and he will see that this is one of the IUTs that falls into his bucket.
Thank you.
If you could also, because all the IUTs and all the awards go through that email address too, if you could, and if you know, just to mention this is non-R&D services IUT, that probably will help him to flag it faster.
In the subject line, right?
Or in the body of the email. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Sabina. And thank you, Miriam, for the question. So thinking about the RFP, going back to that RFP and looking over the solicitation, I know that's a huge part of the pre-award RA role. And this question came in, it's geared towards VRDO. So this is for Erica. What elements of a proposal or an RFP should trigger the RA to maybe suggest to the PI that they should reach out to BRDO for assistance?
So there are different reasons why people would reach out to us for assistance. One is if it's a really large proposal that involves a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of universities. That would be one reason. But there could be other reasons why a proposal is complex, even if it doesn't have a large dollar amount. It could be a $50,000 grant, but be strategically important to the university. And that might be some reason that we help also. So complexity, strategic importance, the size of it, if it's just there's something unusual about it, that would also be a reason why we might be involved. And it never hurts to ask. First come gets first served. So always, it's always.
And as a follow-up question, I'm a little curious. Do most faculty reach out to your office directly, or does the communication come from the RA saying, hey, I have this proposal, this is something your office can get involved in and help my faculty member?
Usually it's from the PI directly. And sometimes it will be because the RA told the PI to contact us.
Okay.
But so. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I know I worked with your office like many years ago. Okay, so this is kind of a general question that came in. So anyone can pick it up and answer it. In your opinion, in your work in office, what is the biggest challenge with pre-award, and how do you address or mitigate that challenge? Kate wants to go first. Go for it, Kate. Thank you.
I'd say the biggest challenge is receiving incomplete proposals and not enough information. And so I think sessions like this are ways to mitigate that. And also just, making sure our communication back to the department, the PIs, the departments and the RAs is clear of what we need. And then just reminding everyone that we always need scopes of work, we always need budgets, and we always need budget justifications in addition to the 700U that we already mentioned. And so just making sure that we have all of those proposal components so that we can receive their proposal and move forward with it. I guess I want to add one more thing. I think one of the biggest challenges is PIs making promises that we can't keep. So they make promises to companies, and so by the time something gets to us, the company already expects, IP, there's something that the company expects. It's something that we can't deliver on. And so I think that's a really big challenge for us too.
Thank you.
I can go. So
Okay,
I think
great. That's right.
one of the biggest challenges for pre-award is kind of juggling between different deadlines, between different proposals. So I think the main thing to mitigate is making sure you have a clear timeline with each professor and you follow that timeline. And it's constantly communicating if you don't hear from them in a business day or two, or you actually even one business day, since sometimes the deadlines can be very tight. You constantly just check in and make sure there's constant communication to meet the deadlines.
I'll piggyback off of that. Something that we struggle with on a constant basis is just making sure that the PIs are informing us that they're going to apply to things, as soon as possible. Usually we're hearing about intent to submit, way closer to the deadline than sometimes we're comfortable with, or that, that would put a lot of pressure on us to be able to scope and set up a proper timeline, especially with incoming postdocs who will, sometimes we'll find out, sometimes days before a proposal is due that, they found out that they need to actually go through, a compliance office to get something signed off on. And so You know, we're always trying to like inform the PIs that they should, you know, be aware. We have a timeline in place. We have a set of you know, deadlines and deliverables, and we're always trying to, you know, make sure that we're informing them of them as often as possible so that it's on their radar at all times. Because sometimes it just puts immense pressure on us to then turn them around and try to get, you know, as complete of a proposal as possible, even under, you know, those stressful considerations.
Thank you, Ryan and John. Does anyone want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I think Ryan and John nailed the #1 problem. But I would also add, so most of the PIs I would say are very gracious and grateful for the work that we do for them. But I find there's a vocal minority that see what I do as sort of a roadblock and an annoying bureaucratic hurdle that they have to jump through. So trying to communicate to them that actually I'm preventing your proposal from getting returned without review. And you may not think that this is an important part, but it actually is. And you know, your budget needs to be right, or you're going to run into trouble down the lane, or you're going to you're not even going to get a review if you haven't met all of these compliance issues. So finding ways to communicate that to them, that these extra deadlines are in the end worth it. That's been a challenge for me as well.
I would say one challenge is making sure that everybody knows what they're responsible for doing, that who is going to do what. And sometimes, especially if you have a lot of people working on something, it's very easy to assume that someone else is going to do it and someone else is going to complete it. And I'll see on projects, especially when it comes to the budget, they'll think, well, we have an RA who's doing the budget and they don't ever need to talk to the RA. Well, no, you need to make decisions about it. And people need to participate and know what they're going to be responsible for and what the deadlines are for that, and herding people together to get them to participate fully. I think that's ringing true to some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to kind of what Ryan and John and Chris were saying about the importance of communication with the PIs. For the RAs, what tools do you use to help communicate such deadlines and requirements and draft documents? You know, is everything going through email, or are you guys utilizing Slack or chat or Google Docs or Drive, or I've heard some RAs put calendar reminders on their faculty's calendar. So just kind of wondering what the RAs are using to help communicate all of this vital information for the proposal.
For myself, I find that like the bulk of my communication does go through email, in part so that I have a written record. It's good to have a written record, in part to protect the PI, to protect yourself. Unfortunately, in some cases, it's really good to be able to get on a call or a Zoom meeting with the PI, and that gives a lot more like face-to-face friendly interaction, but still having a written summary of what you agreed to, what deadlines are, is a big deal. And for other PIs, it really just depends on their preferred method of communication. Like I had a PI who'd like to send a separate email for every component or every thought that they had. So in the middle of the night, so I'd wake up to 10 emails from the same PI, or another PI who gets 300 emails a day. So they'd rather me text them so that they have a streamlined, their text is a lot more streamlined than their email.
All right, John, Chris, Ryan, is there anything else you use?
I mean, yes, email for the most part is how, just to Melody's point. I mean, to make sure that there's a paper trail for one. But I take advantage of labeling within my email, because to Melody's point, sometimes, yeah, I'll get multiple threads for the same Phoebe record that I'm working on, and so being able to tag and group those together so that I can go back and actually have one grouping of messages certainly helps. I mean, I take advantage of email snoozing so I can keep reminding my peers if I don't hear back from them after a couple of days. I do take advantage of Box for as a shared folder, particularly if I'm working with various subawards, so that they can just upload files directly to a shared link that I would provide them. That certainly helps with just component collection. But yeah, I mean, we work with so many different PIs and everybody's communication style is so different that, sometimes it's hard to keep track of all of them, but using TChat, I do have phone calls every once in a while. I do a lot of Zoom meetings. It definitely cuts down on the email communication for sure. But it's still a big component of keeping track of cases and moving things along.
To follow up on what both John and Melody said, sometimes you just have to figure out what method is going to work best for the PI and follow that method. So there are some who like to use Google Drive. There's some who like to use Dropbox. There's some who like to use Box, and you can't say, well, this is the way I want to do it. You go with whatever method is going to work for them. So you might have multiple different ways of working with people. One thing that we often do is set up check-in meetings. So they can be weekly, they can be bi-weekly, depends on how much lead time there is on the project. And then you get the team together and it's kind of a status check. It might just be the PI, the RA, someone from my office getting together and saying, where are we on all of these things? Which biosketches do we still need to get? Which COI forms do we still need to get? How are the subawards going? How's the writing going on this? And then you're kind of reevaluating where the deadlines are and based on what has been done and what progress is being made and what still needs to be done. And then you're also seeing who else can be helping you do things. It may be that the PI is more going to be able to get a biosketch out of someone that the RA wasn't able to, or that I can get it out of someone, So figuring out how you can use your team to get things done too.
Thank you, Erica. That's a good point about catering to what the PI is comfortable with. So we did have a question and then some ongoing conversation in chat. I just wanted to bring up verbally. So at the Incuro presentation yesterday, I don't know if everyone had the opportunity to join their Region 6 lunchtime learning series, which was also on pre-award. But the presenters indicated that their institution, my chat moved, that their institution uses a form for intent to submit. And is there any reason we do not use this at Berkeley? I will say it's going to be, Miriam, it's going to be up to each region. I can speak for the Share region, and that we do have a Google form that our PIs that anyone that is going to house a grant in a unit supported by Share needs to complete. And that form comes in and we see that. And if the PI already has an RA, they know to pick it up and work with that PI directly. If the PI does not have an RA assignment, then one of the supervisors or Henry, our manager, will work to assign an RA.
Is there a deadline on submission?
So on our website, I believe it's recommended that PIs give their RAs 10 business days. Usually they don't follow that, but that's kind of like our general guideline, and that's what our region asks. But we know that sometimes things are outside of the PI's control. So as the RA, we do our best to still meet the 4-day deadline to SPO. I'm not sure if if SPO analysts have access to draft Phoebe records before they're routed. But if I have a proposal that's going to be late, it's a quick turnaround, I will definitely email the SPO analyst to give them a courtesy heads up. So that's personally what I do. I'm not sure if John or Ryan, you want to tack onto that?
Regarding intent to submit, or
yeah, and like what your region
we essentially have the same, which is 10 business days, and it's I think at least 15 if there are subawards involved. But to your point, that isn't always followed, and so I mean, we still get a lot of email requests that are just like, hey, I just want to submit a proposal, and then we will send them the form to help us fill out that PB information. In terms of late proposals, I mean, we'll try to turn them around as quickly as we can, given, depending on where it is in relation to the agency deadline. But, I try to give them try to give SPO as much information as we can, just given what the faculty can provide us, when they tell us. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have any more to add to that besides that. I mean, on our website, we do have a link to the proposal submission process, which basically has this full timeline, laid out for them. And when things are late, we try to provide them with that link again, so that they learn that they need to submit things sooner. I know that doesn't always, sometimes they'll find out about things way late in the process also. So I realize it's not always gonna solve the issue, but those are a couple of things to help mitigate them.
So I do want to mention specifically for the pros region, we have a request, and it is nice when the PIs do submit an intent to submit, and they send us a request, so they let us know beforehand that if the full application is if they could proceed with it, then we can go from there. So it's nice that we have that. But yeah, sometimes we wouldn't get that, and we would get a bit late. So then at that point, we would just have to kind of do a late request sometimes. But yeah, it would be nice to get a heads up beforehand when they submit it.
We also, sorry, Hannah.
No, go ahead.
We also have instances where PIs they say they plan to submit, and then they pull the plug on it like a day or two before. So it's always a balancing act, so that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah. We are running, close to 1 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we have a few more questions. Kate, really quick, what are some key proposal elements to pay particular attention to when submitting proposals to industry partners?
I guess, mostly what I've mentioned before, we need a statement of work, a budget justification, and a 700U. The budget should include full overhead, unless it's, it's something like the J&J Y2 STEM program, or something like that. And if you're in doubt, go ahead and email us in advance, but your default should be the 60.5 research rate, or whatever the appropriate rate is, from our rate agreement. And then I guess the other important components, if there's an RFP, make sure that it gets passed along to us. I think, sometimes we get proposals where we just are assuming there's no RFP because that's kind of the standard with industry. But in fact, there is an RFP, and then we're not able to look at the terms and conditions in advance, which, can be problematic down the road. And then to make sure you're checking the SBIR STTR box if it is that, and to really make sure you're uploading or including the RFP on the first tab, so that we can go back and look at that specifically for Department of Defense. That's really important for us. And also to make sure that the prime sponsor is correct. We have had proposals where it is an SBI or STTR, but the prime sponsor on Phoebe is not correct. So make sure that you have that. And I think that's about it.
Okay, great. Real quick, and kind of on a positive note, what do you guys enjoy most about working on the pre-award side of the grant life cycle?
I love dwelling in possibility, the hope and the promise of funding and exciting projects to come.
I like seeing all the amazing things that our faculty are doing, all the amazing research projects they're doing, and getting to be part of that cycle.
I enjoy like just interacting with the RAs really, and SPO has the very satisfying job of, you know, all the work being, not all of it, but a lot of the work being done. And then we have a satisfying job of being able to submit a lot of the time. So that's cool.
Yeah, I would say having a great team to work with, and also it's great to work with SPO as well. I had no issues with them, and just knowing that I am part of something that can help many people, like it's rewarding, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really rewarding to work with such great people, and just really the amazing work that's being done here on campus. It's very fulfilling, and you know, just all the problem solving that comes along with it. And yeah.
It kind of makes the campus feel both small because you're really getting to know people, but then you're really understanding the breadth of it and how big it actually is by meeting all these different people and learning all the different things that they're doing. But it really makes you feel more part of the community, that it's more your home here.
For me too, I really appreciate being to work with so many people, different people with different teams and experiences, and also the project management aspect of being able to send out a proposal and possibly, hopefully get it awarded.
Yeah, I really like collaborating with everyone. It's really interesting to be able to talk to like RAs and to PIs and see what their research is about. I also really love it when faculty apply for like the, what are those, like the graduate students or for their postdoc support. So I'm like, yay, we're supporting future students and future researchers. So that makes me really happy. I guess for me, it's just, you know, the mere facts I know that I'm supporting the public, you know, the great mission of this public university, pursuing, you know, higher knowledge, and then working with all, you know, all of you guys, just a variety of people with different expertise is just what I really like the most.
All right, we're 3 minutes to 1 o'clock. So if there are no more last minute comments or questions, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to do our closing statements.
Can I
Thank
say
you.
one thing?
Of course you can.
Sorry, just one thing that I've noticed is that the pre-award community they're the nicest people. So when I have questions, I've been able to reach out to people. Maybe I've never even met them before, but I hear that they know something about animal research or, you know, human subjects, something that I don't know about. And they're always so gracious with their time and their expertise. So if you're stuck on something, just reach out, because someone out there will have an answer and be very gracious and helpful.
And just to add to that, the Bragg listserv is a great way to reach out to our community as well, to ask questions and to give information.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kate, as well. So round of applause, emojis, or real life, however you want to do it. To our esteemed panelists, thank you all for joining us today and taking the time out of your busy schedules, and for everyone else to join in and listen in and participate. We, you know, panelists are great. Wait, the questions are even better. So thank you all for participating, whether you are a panelist or not. I just dropped right now the survey link in the Zoom chat. So please take a minute or two to provide some feedback on today's panel meeting, make recommendations for future topics as well. And we will also send that link to the survey in a follow-up email in a couple days. For all of your information, our next Bragg meeting will be September 27th, where we will hear from Professor Richard Allen about the research happening in the Berkeley Seismology Lab. And more information in the meeting invite will come out soon and hit your calendars. So thank you all for joining us right at 1. We're so good at this. Have a fabulous rest of your week, everyone.